safety shoes, or a safety harness. Know what your job requires in the way of personal protective equipment, and be sure to wear it all day, every day. Just as there are many different hazardous work environments, so there are many different types of personal protective equipment. For example, these gloves might be fine for some jobs, but these gloves are a necessity for others. Be sure you match your protective equipment to the job at hand. And don't improvise. If your work calls for some specific piece of protective equipment, then make sure you have it for your own good. To be effective, your personal protective equipment must fit well. And if it doesn't fit well, it may harm rather than help you. And of course, it must be used correctly. Safety equipment manufacturers often include instructions on their packaging. Read these carefully. If you have questions, check with your supervisor or safety director. Having the right equipment and using it properly help ensure your safety on the job. But don't get complacent. Continue to take good care of your personal protective equipment. If it's dirty, clean it. If it's damaged, replace it. Defects and dirt can jeopardize your safety. Just think of your personal protective equipment the way you think of any other tool of your trade. Don't go to work without it. This is Claude Akins, reminding you that safety is your job, too. Even the best of days can suddenly end in disaster. Injuries from trips and falls are the second highest cause of workmen's compensation claims in the country today. In most cases, the injured party blames the fall on a slick or sticky floor. And indeed, many times floors do get slick or sticky. The usual causes are beverage spills, dropped food, oil and grease from machinery, leaky bags or containers, materials tracked in from outside, and the wrong kind of wax or floor cleaner. Covered floors may have torn or loose carpeting or loose and damaged tiles. All of these things can affect the floor surfaces and result in slips and injuries, bad injuries. But surprisingly, in 9 out of 10 cases, investigators have found that the floor surface is not the problem. Instead, the problem is usually something lying on the floor or in the aisle. So instead of slipping, most people are actually tripping. Now let's look at some of the more common causes of tripping. Loose wires or extension cords are high on the list. Uneven stacking of materials is another hazard, especially if something near the floor is sticking out into an aisle. Dollies, stock carts, and merchandise in walkways are also tripping hazards. Tools, nails, screws, and the usual workman's odds and ends are big floor hazards. Anything that's wider at the bottom than it is at the top can cause tripping when left in walkways. So watch out, pick up, and clean up. If you spill something on the floor, wipe it up immediately. If it's sticky, use soap and water. Do your part to keep your working area clean. Use sweeping compound to soak up oil and grease. Then dump the sweepings into a trash container. When you're working with tools, don't leave them scattered. And when you're done, pick up your work area. Wipe your feet before coming inside or from inside areas where oil and grease are on the floor. If you're using extension cords in heavy traffic areas, tape them down. Or, better yet, suspend them overhead if you can. Turn step stools or step ladders parallel to the aisle so the legs don't stick into the aisle. Keep dollies and merchandise stacked to the side of the aisle to leave more clearance. Either stack materials evenly when possible or place a warning sign or safety cone where they protrude into the aisles. Repair tile and carpeting wherever loose or damaged. Carrying a load? Never carry a stack too tall to see over. Break the load into more manageable stacks, short enough so that you can see where you're going. And as much as possible, stay centered in the aisle. If you have to step to one side, stop until you can return to the center of the aisle. These are all simple safety tips, a matter of common sense. But if we all use our common sense
Look out, Marvin.
and do our share for safety,
Thanks.
all our days can be happier. This is Claude Akins reminding you that safety is your job, too.
Valuable national resource. Yet in one recent year, over 6,000 workers lost their lives to workplace-related accidents. Another 3.5 million workers suffered disabling injuries, including many who are permanently impaired. These accidents cost the nation $120.7 billion and resulted in 125 million lost work days. The costs, in terms of lost production, wages, medical expenses, and disability compensation, not to mention human costs, are staggering. In an effort to help reduce these costs, your employer is required to provide a workplace free of recognized hazards. At the same time, you, the employee, are required to fulfill certain responsibilities to help reduce accidents. Your personal safety could depend on your knowledge of these responsibilities and your willingness to accept them. Employee responsibilities. What are they? Do you, as a worker, know what is expected of you to protect yourself and help reduce accidents on the job? Start by reading the OSHA poster at your job site. The Job Safety and Health Protection Workplace poster informs employees of their rights and responsibilities under the OSHA Act. This poster alerts employees to the fact that they too have an obligation to ensure safety in the workplace. Safety requires a team effort. It's not just one person's responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility. Comply with all applicable OSHA standards. OSHA standards are designed to reduce on-the-job injuries and to limit workers' risk of developing occupational disease. They are there for your protection. Most standards cover hazards which exist in a wide variety of industries. Others apply solely to one industry, such as construction, agriculture, and maritime sectors. Make sure you understand the standards that apply to you and your industry. The employee who does not know how to use a machine guard, or the employee who disregards the standards applying to machine guarding, risks serious injury. So does the employee who uses a hazardous chemical without learning about the hazards and safe use of that chemical. Remember, safety information is a vital tool that you need to protect yourself and others. Learn this information and use it all of the time. Follow all employer safety and health rules and regulations and wear or use prescribed protective equipment while engaged in work. Standards require employees to use suitable protective equipment where there is a reasonable probability that injury can be prevented by such equipment. Personal protective equipment includes hard hats, goggles, face shields, earplugs, steel-toed shoes, and respirators. Failure to use personal protective equipment is a common cause of workplace injuries. Consider these facts from a study reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. 84% of workers who sustained head injuries were not wearing hard hats, although 2/5 were required to wear them for certain tasks at specific locations. 99% of approximately 770 workers suffering face injuries were not wearing face protection. 77% of the workers with foot injuries were not wearing safety shoes or boots. And about 60% of the workers with eye injuries were not wearing eye protective equipment. These numbers leave no doubt about the value of personal protective equipment. But remember, using this equipment alone does not eliminate the hazard. If the equipment fails, exposure will occur. Before using any personal protective equipment, make sure you've been trained to use it safely. Report hazardous conditions to the supervisor. If you detect or even suspect an imminent danger situation in the workplace, notify your supervisor or employer immediately. Report all potential hazards, no matter how minor they seem. Also, report any job-related injury or illness to the employer and seek treatment immediately. Statistics for on-the-job injuries and illnesses are a vital requirement for gauging problems and solving them. If employers don't have this information, they can't accurately analyze workplace hazards and make changes necessary to prevent accidents. An occupational injury may be a cut, fracture, sprain, or amputation that results from a work-related accident. An occupational illness is any abnormal condition or disorder caused by exposure to environmental factors associated with employment. If you think an injury may require treatment, don't delay. Seeking immediate treatment for injuries, even minor injuries, can prevent little problems from becoming big ones. Employee responsibilities, they're not just a requirement, they're a privilege. By exercising your responsibilities, you can help make your workplace a better and safer place for everyone. This is James Drury, reminding you to take care and be safe. If you were in a hazardous spill area, you would dress to protect yourself. Personal protective equipment is available for those jobs that require it. Wear personal protective equipment where necessary, and whether necessary or not, always dress safe. John worked in industry for 15 years and was familiar with all types of equipment and safety procedures. But in this case, John was overconfident and thought he could get the job done quickly by moving the movable guard out of the way. When he flipped the guard out of the way and pushed the piece of wood, his shirt cuff became lodged in the cutter head. As John struggled to break free from the machine, his forearm was sliced. John was seriously injured because he not only removed the guard, but he also left his shirt cuff hanging loosely. Accidents happen in all types of environments with all types of equipment. You do not have to give up stylish clothing when you go to work. You only have to dress safe. Keep loose clothing tucked, buttoned, and fitted properly. Remove jewelry that could become lodged or caught in equipment. Common office equipment can be as dangerous as shop equipment if safety precautions are ignored. Each year, over 40,000 office workers are injured on the job. More than 200 of these injuries result in death. Anyone can shred a document. It's a simple, routine procedure that is performed daily in most office settings. Yet David, an upper management employee, was severely injured performing this task. David forgot about his tie for one moment, long enough to sustain a painful neck injury, which will require time lost from work and some therapy.
So, Eric, just turn off.
Go get some scissors. My neck is killing me.
David was lucky that he didn't break his neck.
I just cut it off.
This accident could have been avoided. Make sure ties are fastened or tucked in before using equipment.
This chair.
You know your job. You're the best. Make sure long hair is either tied back or covered with a hat when working with any type of equipment or machinery. How many times have you printed a document? 100 times, perhaps thousands of times. I'll bet you never thought you could sustain an injury by simply printing a piece of paper. Beth never thought so either. Jewelry can be dangerous around common office equipment. Beth sustained an injury that could have been avoided. This could be you. Remember to dress safe. Wear protective clothing when required. Make sure your clothing is secured properly. Check cuffs, buttons, zippers, and ties. Keep long hair tied back or covered with a cap when working with any type of equipment or machinery. Remove jewelry before operating equipment. Remember, if you were in a truly hazardous area, you would dress to protect yourself. But wherever you work, you should always dress safe. These accidents you have just seen are all based on actual incidents. This is James Drury reminding you to saddle up for safety.